Good evening, and thank you all so much for visiting, allowing us to visit in your neighborhood virtually in the northern Edmonds area. I so much wish we could be there in person, and I hope very soon that we can have some neighborhood meetings, maybe outdoors, where we can do this not in a virtual setting, but unfortunately, COVID has forcing us to do this. So real quickly, I just want to kind of run down the sort of format for tonight with the agenda. So the first order of business is going to be, I'm going to be speaking for a little bit, talk about my priorities. Then I'm going to introduce you to a couple of our department directors. I'll have our police department, our parks department, our public works department. I'll talk about a little bit about some of the things that are going on in your neck of the woods. And then we're going to go to questions that were already pre-submitted. And so we'll go address those questions. And then afterwards, we'll open it up to Q&A. And you'll be able to hopefully see here on the PowerPoint how to submit a question. So there's a brief look at the agenda there. All right, and so with that, we'll go ahead and straight into talking about some of my priorities for this year, 2021. And that most importantly is our COVID and our response to COVID-19 and supporting our local economy. Unfortunately, right now, our COVID cases in the county are going up. Our health district has called it now a fourth wave. And if you can see shortly here from some of the numbers, because I could say all kinds of things, but I just want to show you this visual from the health district that shows you our current case counts, which are at 223 per 100,000. So if you can see here, this is the fourth wave. We have more higher case counts than we did the first wave. And so what does this mean? Well, basically, most likely we're currently in phase 3. And that means that under the current number of case counts we have, when you also factor in the number of hospitalizations that we have at our hospitals, they've now exceeded a certain threshold where we will most likely be moving back to phase 2. What does that mean for you and I? It means that if you go into a business or a restaurant, before they had 50% capacity to be able to have, now they're going to have to go back to 25% capacity. And there's going to be a lot of other unfortunate things because unfortunately, folks are not social distancing, they're not wearing their masks, and they're not getting vaccinated. So please, please, please wear your masks, wash your social distancing, and get vaccinated. The folks who are being hospitalized right now are in their 20s, their 40s, their 50s, their 30s. We're seeing much younger people, not elderly, it's younger people now. So very, very important. I think right now, the latest number I saw, we're at 32% statewide and fully vaccinated. So we are a long ways away from getting fully vaccinated where we have that herd immunity. So to give you an idea, in the health district, we need about 600,000 people to be fully vaccinated in this county alone if we want to get to that place where all those restrictions are gone. And right now, that's probably looking at sometime anytime between August and September if we continue to vaccinate. But this week, we're starting for the first time ever to see less people getting vaccinated. So that we're not going to get there unless we have. So if you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. Go to the Snohomish Health District, contact your doctor, your medical provider. They are everywhere, and please get them. All right, so enough on my public service announcement on COVID-19. But one way it's really impacted us is obviously our local economy. And to help us with that, the federal government and Congress and the Biden administration recently passed the American Rescue Plan, which is a $1.9 trillion plan that will help support all folks and families and businesses and nonprofits who've been impacted by COVID-19. And what does that mean for Edmonds? Well, we're looking to get up to over $9 million in federal funds very soon, we hope, and to help those most in need who've been impacted by COVID. And we look forward to being able to work with our council and with the state and the feds as far as that kind of allocation and how we're going to be utilizing it, but very, very important to help as we try to get back to a normal life in our community. But that being said, Edmonds residents are stepping up to help our local economy much more so than other communities. People are spending more right now when it comes to purchasing homes and businesses. They're spending more when it comes to shopping. And how do we know this? We know this from our revenue from our sales tax and from our real estate taxes. So right now, I just want to share with you for the first quarter in 2019, we brought in $530,000 in 2019. In 2020, we brought in $685,000 in real estate excise tax revenue. In 2021, we're at $1.2 million. So people are still wanting to live and buy homes and buy businesses in our community, which is wonderful. Our sales tax revenue, again, very similar numbers we're sort of seeing here. In 2019, we saw 2.6 million in sales tax revenue. In 2020, we saw 2.69 million in sales tax revenue. And now the most recent 4-month sales for 2021, we're seeing over $3 million in sales tax revenue for over a 4-month period. So very, very strong numbers, which is wonderful, but we need to be still making sure that we're out there being safe and watching our distances and getting vaccinated. All right. In fact, with the exception of bars and restaurants, retail sales in nearly all sectors of the Edmonds economy have grown from 2020 until today, despite being in a pandemic, which I think is just really, really amazing for our city. The next priority I want to talk about is renewing Highway 99. And I want to just touch on 3 things because Highway 99 plays a major part of our city. It's a part of our community that has been neglected for a long, long time. It averages about 40,000 vehicles a day that go through there. And it's also one of the most dangerous roadways we have. It's the most dangerous roadway in our city, and it's actually one of the most dangerous roadways in the state. So this year we're designing, we got money, our city council approved about a little under $10 million in federal funds as well. We have money to install a center median. It's going to go 2 miles long. It's going to be planted. It's going to look wonderful, and it's going to also reduce vehicle crashes by about 1/4. We're going to have also a lighted pedestrian crossing when there's a section of Highway 99 that you live far north. There's no intersections or nothing. So we're going to have a lighted pedestrian crosswalk for there, which is super exciting about that. And we're also going to have signs on either end, so you know when you entered and left Edmonds. So real exciting about that. We're also beginning a community renewal plan. So particularly focusing on our southern portion of Highway 99, which has been a lot of problems in regards to abandoned buildings and some graffiti and crime and other issues. So we're currently, I know, as I understand it, looking at a consultant to bring on to help us with this, but this will allow us in the city to take actions to do public-private partnerships, all kind of unique opportunities to really help revitalize and redevelop that area to make it much more of like a neighborhood, which is really what we want that to be. And also to assist with that neighborhood, we're also creating, want to have a neighborhood satellite office up on Highway 99. So right now, my city staff has been out looking for properties, and we're currently talking to one right now. And so very excited to open up to have a satellite office. So instead of folks having to come just online, but once COVID gets to a place where we can open it up, you'll be able to literally just go into your neighborhood city office for assistance. So very excited about that. And again, we're just starting that off, so hope to have more information as we move on that. Another priority I want to talk about is how we're helping our most vulnerable. For the first time ever, our city has created a human services program that is fully funded, thanks to our city council. So $500,000. And it's going to bring on, we've decided this year, a contracted social worker and also a contracted service agency to assist us with that. And so right now we're looking at reviewing different service agencies that can help us with this program, but it's to help our seniors, it's to help those who are housing unstable, those who are unsheltered, prevent those from becoming homeless. And this program is going to be housed now, as of April 1st, it's been housed now in our Parks Department. They've been very involved in a lot of our COVID response, in our special child care program called LEAP, which you'll hear a little bit about shortly. And also other sort of vaccinating efforts. You know, they did a wonderful job of not only contacting a lot of our long-term care facilities, but also of our homebound residents. They were able to identify approximately 50 homebound residents, and we were able to get them vaccines. So our Parks Department is doing some really amazing stuff in response to COVID. And so this seemed like a natural fit. So very excited to see them as we move forward with that. And my almost on your priorities is equity inclusion. So last year, I created an equity and justice task force involving members of our community. They met throughout the year, and then the beginning of this year, they announced some recommendations. And they focused primarily initially on our police department, but they also had some sort of recommendations for city government. And one of those recommendations of our police department was community outreach and community engagement. And so I'm very happy to introduce you soon tonight, our new acting police chief, who has a very specific background in implementing community engagement programs in other communities. And so super excited about that. And then also our police department now is currently hiring a community engagement coordinator. And so in fact, you can apply right now till May 14th. You go to our City of Edmonds website if you're interested or know somebody who'd be a great community engagement coordinator. Secondly, catch my breath here, is our the recommendation from our task force list for as we look about how we make decisions, whether it's from budget or from policy, but to start doing that, looking through an equity lens. So they created this equity lens to help inform us, but that's just the first step. Now requires us in city government and all different city departments. So how do we actually implement that? And so we're beginning a training to kind of retool how we as city operate. So then, for example, if we're interested in someone says, oh, we should go build a park, along the waterfront, we have to say, okay, does that make sense? Is that serving those who are underserved historically? It makes us look at things from a different light. And so that's something we have implemented and starting right now. So very excited to see how that grows in our city. And then we also have this new art grant program. So in the budget, we had set aside about $50,000 for our Arts Commission to come up with some grants for those to address diversity and equity issues. And now I'm happy to announce we have a new fund. It's called the Create a Future 2021 Grants Program. And it's to promote diversity and access to arts and culture in Edmonds. And there'll be 5 large grants totaling $33,500 and 4 smaller grants totaling $3,400. And there's also potential for another small round of small grants. And then lastly, and some issue I know Edmonds residents feel very, very strongly about is our parks and protecting our open spaces and expanding on them. So I'm happy to report that in this legislative session, our state legislature has set aside some money to help us with marsh purchasing for the marsh, which is just wonderful. About $250,000. It's kind of like seed money. It's going to cost potentially a lot more than that, but I think that's a great first opportunity. And then secondly, in the transportation budget, there's now special language that our legislators introduced that provides for that if and currently, if you don't know, the marsh is a lot of it is owned by right now it's Unical 76, but it's supposed to be sold to, once it's cleaned up, to the Washington Department of Transportation. And so we now have this special language in the transportation budget that says once the Washington Department of Transportation gets this land, which they are no longer going to use, that we, the city, could be the first in line to potentially purchase that property. So that's wonderful. And then we've currently right now, my conservation advisory group is working on a land acquisition strategy. So we look at a proposed criteria of sort of when we get opportunities to purchase parkland or open space land, what are those things that we're looking at to see, does it help, for example, promote safe salmon? Does it promote, habitats? So those kinds of things. And most importantly, we're looking at right now some actual open space acquisitions in our city. And one of them could be in the North Edmonds area. We're involved in preliminary discussions right now, but I just kind of let you know that. So from a regional perspective. And then finally, later this year, we'll be implementing, we're starting our salmon safe certification process, which will basically, we'll have an outside third party comes in and reviews all of our policies and procedures to make sure that we are, how we operate and plan and how we develop our watershed that is actually safe for our salmon. So with that, I will now turn it over to each of our special park director guests, directors. So we'll start with Angie Fesser, who's our Parks Cultural Services Director. Angie.
Great, wonderful. Again, Angie Fesser, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Director. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, especially on such a lovely sunny evening. Thanks for spending your time with us. I have a couple of things I want to talk about and give an update for our department. First, the 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan update. We call that the PROS plan. This is a very important document that we use as a guideline to map out our approach to how we manage and enhance our park system, our trails, our open spaces, and recreation programming for the entire community of Edmonds. And it's very much based on community involvement and engagement. So we want to hear from you. We have a handful of touch points and opportunities for that to happen, such as public meetings, a survey that will go out in the mail, and if possible, a couple of in-person pop-up meetings as well. You can join and be a part of that. If you're interested, contact our department and get on the email list for notification, as well as updates to the project on our website for the city. Next slide. Also, we do have recreation programming occurring for spring and summer. Our CRAZE, our recreation guide, is actually published electronically now rather than print because of the changing COVID guidelines so frequently. We decided to go to an electronic version that we can keep updated as soon as those things happen, but this is available on our website. We have quite a few programs available for families and children and youth and adults. We have athletics and sports. We have environmental education programs, camps for kids around nature, and Lego camps and art camps, and a gymnastics camp as well. So check out our CRAZE publication for programs. Some of those you can do at home. We have virtual park tours that you can feed into, and we have a lot of opportunities. We've been very flexible in changing our program to adapt to the COVID environment that we function in now. Also, just a reminder, our facility rentals are available. Our shelters, gazebos, and the plaza room are still available for rental and use as per current COVID guidelines at the time of the event. Next slide, please. In response to the COVID impacts to our community and distance learning, we started a program last October called LEAP, which stands for Learning Enhancement and Activities Program. And it was tailored specifically for families and children of households that were going to be struggling with children's education happening in the home. Parents had to work, they were not able to be available for the day or have childcare to help their children work through school. So we created a program in the Francis Anderson Center, which is actually an old elementary school. So we repurposed it back to its original purpose and created these small pods and classrooms, we called them, for children to come in, and we help them with their daily schoolwork every day, the instructors and recreation staff. But then we kind of bundle that all with day camp all around that. So before, during their lunch break, and afterwards. Next slide, please. We do provide a lot of fun activities for them as well. So next slide, you can see here, we repurposed the gym, they go outside and they play quite a bit. And the last thing I did want to mention too is folks might want to know that Yost Pool will be open and functioning this year. Some serious modifications to that with COVID. It will look very different, but the pool will be operated by the YMCA and available for use for public and team swims and lap swims and general drop-in services. The spray pad, we are not able to open during phase 2 and phase 3, but phase 4, it will open the minute we get into phase 4. It's fully functional and operational. We're just waiting for the clearance of phase 4. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Acting Chief Michelle Bennett.
I have to, let me introduce her. I also just want to say that our Parks Department has done a great job, especially during these COVID times. In the summertime historically has been our high usage for our parks, and this winter and the previous winter we saw that the park usage was just as high, so equal amount. So folks out there are wonderful, they're using our parks, they're great. There's also a lot of wear and tear that's happening to our parks, so please take care of our parks and help our Parks Department out. Now I'd like to introduce our interim acting chief, Michelle Bennett, with our police department. Oh, and you're on mute. I feel like I'm in a city council meeting. I can't say that.
Probably won't be the first time. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be in the city. Thank you so much for the introduction. I've been here about 6 weeks now. I'm loving every minute of it, loving getting to know everyone and meeting with various community groups and folks within our community. And the officers here have been fantastic as well. So I'll give you as much of an update as I have. This summer, prior to my arrival, the officers did a parks tour where they went through and did community engagement on a particular date or dates to meet with the public. So that was a pretty successful event. We've also been working a lot regarding traffic controls. We've been doing some at 188th, 192nd to try to control speed. There haven't been a number of accidents, not a high number of vehicle crashes in those areas or in the north end, but it's something that we've been using the radar trailer for to make sure we can address speeding complaints and make sure that we are doing the best thing we can there for speed. So in the meantime, we, as the mayor mentioned, are looking at hiring our community engagement specialist and coordinator so that that advertisement is out. We're looking forward to starting as many community engagement programs as we can within obviously the COVID limits, as we will hopefully branch out as hopefully things die down. And otherwise, it's great to be here. I'm learning a lot. And if anyone has any questions, I think there are some at the end, I'm happy to meet. Or if you have a community group you'd like me to come speak at, I'm happy to do that as well. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Next, we'll turn over to our Public Works Director, Phil Williams.
Well, thank you very much and welcome to everyone. We won't have a lot of time. Public Works has a lot going on this year in terms of replacing old water lines, old sewer lines, new drainage systems, paving projects. But two things in particular I thought I would mention tonight, and then we can be guided by your questions later on. One is about Perrinville, and all of a sudden I'm lost the, where did that go? The actual PowerPoint, but I'm assuming it's on the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, why can't I? All of a sudden. Let me just do this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this, if you go to the first slide, I'm going to start talking a little bit about the issues surrounding the Perrinville Creek, which is up north, and it's turned into a pretty major issue for us in the last several months. I think you'll all remember the very major storms we had. They happened to be on December 21st and the 28th, kind of bracketing Christmas, and again, another large one on January 4th. And the Perrinville Creek Basin is, if not unique, it is certainly different than many of our other urban streams here in Edmonds and other places. It has a steep gradient in the upland, and that formation that it comes through is a very sandy, rocky soil. And the high flows that we now get in Perrinville Creek, I mean, you could always in the past get a high flow here and there, but our storm pattern has changed. I think you're all familiar with what the theories are in the Pacific Northwest with climate change, that we will get a much larger percentage of our annual rainfall in fewer and fewer storms. So each of them to be much larger and more intense. And that's what we had, was a cluster of storms like that late in December and early January. And when that happens, the flows in Perrinville Creek peak very high and very quickly, and it carries with it all sorts of sediment, that sand and gravel that's in the basin, and brings it down the hill. A lot of it doesn't make it through the culvert at Talbot Road, and a great deal of it does. And it ends up down here where this picture was taken, near a high flow diversion, two high flow diversion boxes that we have there, which were designed 27 years ago and built to allow normal flows to go underneath the fence you see on the left, and the higher flows to be stripped off and go out a pipeline directly to Puget Sound. Well, it worked well for a while, but as our storm patterns have changed over the years, it does not work well now. We had hoped to only have to clean this whole thing out maybe once a year. We've cleaned it out, I think, 6 times since the end of December. And that looks to be the pattern that we'd have to follow going forward. And each time this happens, all that sediment goes down that little tiny channel that you can't see right now on the other side of that fence, that's been highly manipulated. It's not nearly big enough to carry the flows and the sediment that that we're now seeing. And so right now that's blocked off, and the flows are going out an overflow pipe to Puget Sound, which has created a situation that has to be addressed very quickly. And we've been working with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. We've been working with the Tulalip tribes both their freshwater fisheries biologists as well as their saltwater fisheries biologists. We've been working with the BNSF Railroad and other stakeholders to try to come up with a good answer here. And obviously, if there was a really good answer that was cheap and could be done quickly, we would have found it much earlier. That's not where we find ourselves. If you go to the next slide, however, the discussions we've had since December have come up with a rough plan that looks something like this. If you look at the lower right portion of the picture, that little blue sticking in is where Perrineville Creek, having left the county park, comes down to Talbot Road. And that green section is a culvert. It happens to be a hanging culvert, which means the bottom of the culvert is well above the level of the creek, which means any fish, whether they are anadromous or salmon, or whether they're resident fish in the creek, if they end up in the lower creek, they can't get back to the upper creek. So that's a fish blockage. That's been an issue for years. And then the stream then picks up, it daylights, and it continues on that blue line down to where you see that cluster of activity. I don't know if you're seeing my cursor, but where the two green dots are, that's where we have those diversion boxes you saw in the earlier picture. The channel, the portion of flow that at normal flows would just continue on underneath that fence, which is kind of along that fence line you can see between the two homes. And it goes in front of one house and then makes a 90-degree right turn, another 90-degree right turn, and another 90-degree turn to get to the BNSF culvert, which is the orange chunk of pipe that goes under the tracks. Well, streams don't do that normally. That they don't make several 90-degree turns. And all that does is create a place for sediment to settle out. And although I don't have a picture on this slide deck, that entire channel from the diversion boxes out to the BNSF culvert is completely full of sand and rocks right now. So what to do? I think our recent conversations with WDFW and the Tulalip tribes would suggest that we need to build a new channel, which you see in purple, that has a more direct route out to the culvert. That would obviously involve some negotiations with a private property owner, which we've started. And our hope is by straightening that out, widening the channel, deepening it, it will be able to handle the flows that Perrineville Creek is now exposed to. And that would be a self-cleaning channel. So eventually we'd take out the diversion structure there, maybe not right away, but soon enough. And then we'll have to replace that BNSF culvert with an open bottom culvert or bridge to create a fish-friendly entrance to Perrineville Creek. So that's kind of the plan. And we're trying to do that in a big rush. I think we're going to end up having to declare an emergency in order to help us out with the Army Corps of Engineers. And we seem to have the support right now of the Tulalip tribes and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So I think that's promising, but it'll be very difficult to get that done in this year's fish window. Next slide. Now, there are other things we can do to help Perrineville Creek, of course, replacing the Talbot Road culvert as well. But we also have done some infiltration work where we intercept stormwater and then infiltrate it into the groundwater rather than have it discharged directly to Perrineville Creek. Once it enters the groundwater, it can slowly migrate towards the creek, which it does, and help augment flows in the low flow period of the year, which is also a benefit. We completed the first half of that at Seaview Park in 2018. It's about a $700,000 piece of work. That was 75% grant funded, and the rest comes from the city. Phase 2 is in design this year. Construction will be next year, and that's about $750,000. It will double the size of that infiltration project. And again, we got grant funding to help with that. There are other infiltrations like this one that have been identified in a CIP for future implementation when we can find the funding to do that. These projects will intercept stormwater otherwise headed to Perrineville Creek, which reduces flows. If the flow is reduced, the velocity of the flow is also reduced, and the erosive capability or the erosion that results from it is also reduced. So that helps with both flow and sediment transport. And we are continuing to expand the rain garden program in the Perrineville Basin. And that will slowly, unfortunately, but still surely, but slowly over time, also help to reduce peak flows in the creek. We're also evaluating erosion control projects between Talbot Road and then upstream to where the post office is, where the drainage first daylights into the park. There are places up there with walls that are 30 and 40 feet tall, solid sand that are being undercut and incised. And every once in a while, a big block of that will fall into the creek and get carried downstream. And then we end up having to dig it out of our diversion boxes. So we will be looking at projects to improve that as well. And we also have to be working seriously with the city of Linwood, since 75% of this whole drainage basin of 764 acres is in Linwood. Next slide. That's, I think, all I had to say about Perrineville quickly. I wanted to talk a little bit about paving. This is a project that will be occurring in the northern part of our city. Depends on what you consider north, I guess, but I kind of took a chunk of this off our website. You can see starting a little bit farther south at Beach Place, there's 6th and Carroll to Aloha, and so forth and so on. All of the red projects are paid for with city paving dollars. Blue projects are places where we put in new water lines, and that will be mostly paid for, the paving that is, by the water department or the water utility. And there's some that are storm related, the ones in the green, and that weird turquoise color is a sewer project. Those will all be done in 2021. So you'll have new surfaces on those streets. Next slide. Another big paving project, and this one is really good to get to finally. We're partnering with Linwood. We partnered on a grant application, which we were successful on. So in addition to all those paving projects I just showed you, we'll also be paving 76th Avenue North from the right in this picture at 196th all the way to Perrineville Creek between the two green stars. I said 196, but I typed 194. Sorry about that. This is, as I said, a joint project. The Edmonds share of the project is about 1.1 million. We got 540,000 of that from a state grant. And so the total paving cost between the projects on the previous page and this one is about $1.13 million worth of paving. Next. Okay, that was mine. That's it.
All right, thank you very much for those details, Phil, and for also the talking about a little bit about our response to the Perrineville Creek situation. So next, we're going to do the pre-submitted questions from our residents. So those who submitted questions before tonight, so we've already actually have those up available. So we'll go ahead and start those, and we'll show those on. We have those already on a slide. So the first one is, and I'm just maybe abbreviating, but you can all read it up there. But when we purchased our home, we could walk down North Meadowdale Road and access the beach. 10 years or so, there was a fence that was installed blocking access. We understand there are safety concerns with the railroad tracks regarding crossing it. We wonder what can be done so we can have beach access again. So looking to those who may have answers on how we can provide the best way to provide safe access to the beach if possible.
Well, I'll start off. And I'm sure my answer is going on, just a hint, it's going to be disappointing, but largely because BNSF has taken a very aggressive posture in the last 2 to 3 years about accessing across their tracks, even to private property owners that have, say, gates off on their back fence that abut the railroad frontage. They are watching, and they want people to call in when they see anybody crossing their railroad tracks. They've had a couple fatalities in the last 4 years where people, one was a couple just recently married walking on the railroad tracks, and the train came up behind them, and one of them heard it at the last minute, jumped off, and the other one didn't. And it's incidents like that that create liability for the railroad, and certainly the concern for human life in general has just really amped up their response to people accessing their tracks. That has happened after the fence was put up. The fence was put up quite a bit earlier, several years earlier. And there is no gate there. And so we've been plagued by people cutting the wire on the fence just to get through there and get out over the tracks. And it's been kind of a battle trying to keep the fence in place and keep it secure. I don't know that I see, unless Haynes Wharf Park at that location, if that were to be something someday, it doesn't look like it's on a track to do that. That building that's sitting out on piers out there used to be kind of a going concern, but right now there doesn't appear to be any impetus or money behind doing something with it, creating a meaningful crossing there of the railroad tracks. And I don't think the railroad wants any more crossings in this part of Edmonds. I doubt you're going to see that be more friendly to pedestrians going forward. And I'm sorry, but that's about the best answer I can give you.
Thank you, Phil. All right, our next question. Are there any plans for installing or extending sidewalks, especially between Perrinville, Meadowdale Beach Park areas? Also, how difficult is it to create street improvements for more windy, mostly residential thoroughfares found in the area? And then they're talking specifically about 76th Avenue West. It's both fairly busy and narrow, and there's several hilly streets that connect without sidewalks. And then another spot is 180th Street in particular, has a section that's a blind hill. So I'm probably going to start to, I'll also look for Phil on this one.
Yes, and there's a lot in that question. I can tell you that what we have done in the past, we have a section of our comprehensive transportation plan that deals with sidewalks and other pedestrian amenities. That was last updated in 2015, but it did develop a list of short, we call them short sidewalk segments, and also a section of longer segments of sidewalk, just kind of broken out that way, and selected those as priority streets when we did have sidewalk money. It's hard to get sidewalk money. There are some grants available through the state. There are safe routes to schools programs. There are enhancement dollars coming from WSDOT. And most recently, the city itself augmented those resources by funding a sidewalk crew. So we now have 2 people that can be supplemented with the rest of our street division staff to do smaller sidewalk projects. And we've done a number of those. I'm going to have to look a little more. I know we have one project under design up north, but I don't think it's any of the ones that you mentioned there. And Catherine, if you're the person that submitted that question, maybe you could contact me offline and we could talk in a little more detail about sidewalks up north. You know, all of that was annexed, of course, most of it quite a long time ago, but from the county, and the county just never had any standards for sidewalks, so they were never built. And what we look for is places where there are significant numbers of pedestrians and stretches of street where they make key connections between a school and a park or things like that, medical facilities, commercial areas, and high density residential. And that helps with the priority to get a project moved up. And I'm happy to talk to you more. I think you can find my contact information pretty easily on our website, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about that.
Thank you, Phil. And yes, Kevin, I think if we have your contact information, we'll also reach out to you too. You know, I think we, you know, and as I understand, I think about only half of our city streets have sidewalks. So it's something we're constantly trying to play catch up with and really want to see more of. So I'm committed to getting us more sidewalks, and we'll definitely look to see what we can do up in your neck of the woods. Next question. I live 1 block north of 186th Street on 88th. In the past 2 years, there have been 4 accidents, including one vehicle crash over an embankment landing in the Maplewood Rock and Gem Club. The city transportation improvement plan calls for traffic signal, which would solve many of these vehicle-related accidents. My question is, when the targeted date for the project can get completed? And does the recent uptick in accidents put it at a higher level of importance relative to other similar projects in the city? Mr. Williams.
I think that's me too. And spoiler alert, this may sound a little bureaucratic. I apologize for that, but there is a fairly disciplined process that cities, counties, state transportation agencies follow in deciding when a situation has risen to the level where certain kinds of traffic control devices should be applied. And there's a national manual on that. And this issue has bubbled up, I don't know how many times, even since I've been here, and well before that too, which has been about 10, 11 years now. We've talked about it at city council level several times. I think the best answer is a traffic signal, but currently that intersection, of course, the dominant traffic is east-west. There's fairly low amounts of traffic going north and south. That doesn't necessarily meet what they call warrants for a signal. And since it's a state highway, the state would not allow us to put a signal in until it meets some package of warrants. Now, you mentioned accidents. That is one of the criteria. If you've had an accident history there that rises to a certain level, and I can't say whether this one does just yet. We'll be reviewing that shortly. But that can be another reason where a signal could be put in. We did highlight some other possible lower cost solutions that we thought would help. Unfortunately, they all involve changing the access north and south to where if you come up to the stop sign, you wouldn't be making left turns. You'd be making right turns only. And I don't think the neighborhood was very happy about that. We are, if it helps, putting a new hawk signal just east of there at 84th at the top of the hill, which will be pedestrian activated, be a wonderful safety project where that will be now the best place to cross as a pedestrian on the state highway. And it's not too far out of the way, but that's about the best answer I've got for you. It doesn't currently meet the requirements of putting in a traffic signal. And so far, the other solutions that have been offered up haven't been very popular, haven't received a popular reception.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, next question. During the pandemic, most of us hiked Southwest County Park, the largest park in Edmonds. There are no current maps for trails, and police and EMT do not know the routes. Visitors often get lost on the north side of it. And there's now a screen, something blocking, so I can't read the question. But something about trail maps to remove maps up on, anyway, I can't fully read the question because there's a technical issue here, apologies. Thank you. To update the maps to provide accurate maps, the only thing is remove them. I realize this park is owned by the county rather than the city, but their neglect of the parks puts our residents at risk. So I'll start off with Angie on this one.
Correct, yes, and as you did note in your statement here, that property is owned and maintained by Snohomish County. And I believe just recently, last couple of weeks, there was an article in my Edmonds News about some history of this parcel and showed some of the map or the trails throughout the map. The city can have a conversation with the county to ask to see if maybe we could do something together to help with that with their trail maps or even identifying trails on site while you're in the park. But I think at this time, I'll actually pass it over to Acting Chief Bennett to talk about emergency response to that location and how that's handled.
So for emergency responses, as was pointed out, it's a county park. However, being that it's in the city, of course, we would respond, Edmonds Police, to any issues that may occur there. We're also all on multi-jurisdictional radios, so we have a lot of coordinated responses to issues that might occur in our parks, especially if it's within the city of Edmonds. So our officers do area checks through there, and we have also directed our officers do extra checks in the parks. Angie and I have been working together on this to make sure if there are any complaints or concerns that we have extra response within the parks.
I guess I'll have a follow-up question. Angie, have we reached out to have we ever asked the county about, hey, could you update your maps? Is that something we can maybe do?
Absolutely, that's something we do. Actually, I have a call scheduled with the Tom Teagan, the director of Snohomish County Parks, in the next week. So this will be one of the topics that I'll bring up with him and see if we can work on that together.
Awesome, awesome, great. So yeah, hopefully with our little push and influence, we can collaborate with the county and get some trails marked properly so folks don't get stuck, lost, or need help and can't say where they are. So thank you, or find their way out. Thank you. All right. I don't know if we have any more pre-submitted ones. Oh, we do. Okay. This one's specific to Perrineville Creek. How is it remotely responsible to allow what would essentially be clear cutting of Perrineville Woods to allow for development, especially when the development will likely result in McMansions and not affordable housing? Shouldn't the natural systems be preserved until a solution is identified, implemented, and demonstrated to be effective? And then the second part of this question, shouldn't the tree code prevent tree removal in sensitive watersheds like Perrineville? This is from Knit Rich. Who'd like to tackle that one?
I think I might be the only choice here. If Shane were here, she'd probably jump in ahead
Yes,
of
our
me.
development services director, unfortunately, is not here, but yes. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I can't make too many comments, I think, about the tree code and the changes that are being made there. I think there's some improvements certainly on the way to help better manage trees in Edmonds and make it less likely that they'll all get cut down during development projects. I think that's true, and that would apply to the Perrineville Basin as it would other places. The other thing I might just say is anytime new development goes in, it does have to put in stormwater mitigation, and that involves at a minimum detention if it's anything over 2,000 square feet of impervious surface, and the number of units involved here certainly would trigger that. So in terms of having quicker runoff from a developed site than you do from a forested site, which is true, of course, but the developer is required to put in systems that will hold that water back and release it only at the rate that would have been released if it was a forested site. And that's the way the new, not new anymore, stormwater regs are applied both in Linwood and in Edmonds and all throughout the Perrineville Basin. That doesn't in any way diminish the value of mature trees or the other benefits they provide, the visual and aesthetic benefits, the island warming effect that they can help mitigate. There's a lot of other benefits from trees, but vis-a-vis Perrineville Creek, I think it's important to note that those development rules require that the post-developed area can't release stormwater at any rate faster than not just the pre-development condition, but going all the way back to the forested condition is the standard that they have to meet.
Thank you, Phil. And I'll just add that, our city staff has been working, particularly Development Services Departments, working very closely with our city council in updating our tree code to prevent, whole clear cutting and whatnot. So it's a very extensive, elaborate process, this updating of our tree code. And we currently are in there to make it harder to cut trees and to protect our trees and our tree canopy. And we're taking a lot of steps to do that. So it's very, very complicated, and at any one of our city council meetings, it usually is currently being addressed. So I would say stay tuned for more as we update the tree code. And I don't know if I think that might be our last pre-submitted one. So at this point, for those of you here now, if you click on the Q&A function in the control bar, that sounds all very technical. But anyway, down below, you see a little thing that says Q&A. And if you highlight that, and then you can type in your question in the screen. So let's open it up now for your questions. And then I get them emailed, then I get them and I will read them out once I get them. And I'll just add, as we're waiting for folks to type up some questions, that of course, I'm looking forward to when we can meet, whether it's in a park or maybe some sort of outside structure, we can get together with a safe number of folks in, your neighborhood, in more neighborhoods, in smaller groups. So we have more of a informal back and forth. I understand this can seem very structured and PowerPoints and all those kinds of things, but we're also, it's, video, and we're trying to make it engaging and interesting. It's hard to do that. But anyway, really this opportunity is for you to sort of, if there's things that in your neighborhood, that something you want to ask or something you want to share, we'd love to hear it. Well, while we're waiting for folks to get a question, we will actually now share with you just a video that just kind of highlights some of the things from last year. The city, some highlights, some visuals of sort of what our city was like during COVID and how resilient we were.
You're muted, Mike.
And I'm muted. You're gonna tell me to unmute. So, okay, we got a couple things pop up. So let me go ahead and read the first one here. This is one from Sam. The city easement for the sewer pump station on the north side of Talbot Road has a locked gate, which only the city and specific residents of a particular part of the plat map have access. The combination of the lock seems to have been given out to a lot of people who clearly don't live in the neighborhood. Is there any way chance of getting this combo changed? Ooh,
That'd be me
tough question
too.
there. Bill, you got that one?
Yeah, this has been a sore point for years. I don't know exactly when that, if you want to call it a program, started, but there's about 2 locations where we have pump stations that are fairly close to the railroad right of way. sewage tends to flow that direction. And so that's where we end up with pump stations. And people that lived around there have said, you know, can we get keys to be able to go through your fencing and access the beach? And somebody said yes a long time ago. And I think maybe at a more innocent time. And, you know, when we get asked this question frequently, I think we need to do a better job, as I said earlier, due to the railroad's now very aggressive posture about people accessing the beach across their tracks, which there's no other real choice in getting to the beach. You know, this has been just something that's been sitting out there. I'm sure that houses get bought and sold, the keys get left, and then copies get made and given to their kids and their kids' friends. And you're probably absolutely right. There's a lot of people that are taking advantage of having keys to get to an area that is private property owned by the railroad, about which they'd be very mad if they knew about it. And I mean, I don't know what to say. I'd kind of look for some direction from our leadership here, our mayor and our council, as to what to do about that issue. I hate to be the ogre and just go out and change the lock and not give anybody any keys. It's hard to know exactly what our options are legally.
Yeah, this is an interesting problem too, and I'm happy to start looking into this more and see how we can find a solution, because yeah, we don't want just anybody to have access to that. At the same time, we can't just cut off everybody too. So trying to find how sort of something that works, but obviously what's happening right now is not working. So thank you for raising that. Next one looks like is not a question, just a comment from Jim and Camille. We are new to Edmonds North End, and I just want to say that I think the city is doing an amazing job in the 76th Avenue and Meadowdale Beach Road area. Thanks to all involved. Phil, what are you doing up there?
Quite a few things, really. I don't know if they're all that visible though, but I can tell you your water system and your sewer system, which everybody just assumes will work, is working better than it used to.
Excellent, thank you. Keep it up. All right. Okay, so those were some good warm-up questions. I know I'm sure there's some stuff that you're just dying to ask us. And again, I am sorry that we can't do this in person. I hope to do this sooner in person, so that if you don't have an opportunity now, this won't be the only opportunity. I will make a point to come up there in person to talk with you in a, you know, like I say, a more or less sort of formal video setting. Yeah. All right. Just taking a look. All right, so and we're actually right on time. So we were going to go to about 7:30. So we are actually at 7:30. So feel free that if there's something that comes to you later, or if you didn't want to ask us now but want to ask us through an email or give us a call or phone call, please reach out to us, reach out to me, reach out to any one of our city departments. I'm happy to chat with you about whatever thing you are concerned about or maybe you're happy about. But we really want to just do a best we can to serve you and also keep you updated what we're up to and what we're doing. We've had a couple of these now virtually, and I'd love again to have these in person. So hopefully soon, if everybody keeps doing what they need to be doing with our response to COVID and wears your masks and get vaccinated and you know, meets and, you know, outside and small groups, that we will be able to do these activities in person. And so in the meantime, be safe, hang in there, and we'll do what we can to keep you in the loop, whether it's online, via regular mail, or, you know, through our city council and our city council meetings. There's many ways you can be informed. We've actually updated recently our city website. So it's now much more visually appealing and easier to find things. So you can see all the kinds of things that we're working on and they're happening in our city. So thank you very, very much for taking the time this evening on a work night. I know you all have families and things going on, a lot to do. So really appreciate you stopping by and allowing us to chat with you for a little bit. And thank you all very much to my department directors and all the city staff who worked to make this neighborhood meeting possible. With that, have a wonderful, wonderful night. Good night.
Bye.